I am told we're live, even though I never ever believe it. Look at all this tablecloth. I'm afraid to put this down. I'm going to get coffee on the beautiful white table. Yeah. Hello! Welcome to Healthcare Triage Live. We have the set changed here because we're making a special series of videos, and so you get a preview. It's so exciting. Anyway, sorry we missed you last week. I'm just trying to get to the right screen here. What was last week? Oh, Mark was out of town. He was lazing around somewhere, and we couldn't do it without him. And that's what happens. Anyway, we will also unfortunately not be here next week because I will be on vacation. And so we're going to do some stuff this week. Let's get right into it. Question number 1. Ikawan asks, in your video on cyclamate, you only talk about cancer, but according to the NCI, the FDA's concerns about cyclamate are not cancer related. So what are the FDA's concerns? Should they concern me too? What are the FDA's concerns? I mean, well, we're going to look it up. So, I mean, we discussed many of the concerns that people bring up with artificial sweeteners in general. In fact, ironically enough, if you watch Monday's episode, I talk about the headlines that talk about artificial sweeteners and diabetes. So if this turns out to be diabetes, you just go watch Monday's episode. If this turns out to be something else, I don't know. But, the original concerns were all about cancer, and that's what we discussed. While Stan looks that up, I'm going to go on to question 2. Mitchell Mounts asks, I actually get to watch live today. Quick, what's your favorite tabletop game? Oh, man, the favorite one? I'll give you a few. I really like Castles of Burgundy, which was a Stan recommendation. And that one is good. I like Puerto Rico quite a bit. My boys have actually been really into, and Sydney, my daughter's all really been into Colosseum recently, which is also a Stan recommendation. You should be asking Stan this question. Catan, we always get back to Catan once in a while. I used to love Agricola, but the setup got to be too much, especially because we tried Caverna. Man, the setup on that makes the setup for Agricola look easy. What else do we play a lot?
The Agricola 2-player game is great.
Really? I have to look into that because I also love the San Juan card game, which I guess is the Puerto Rico. That's really good too. Anyway, we could do this all day. And if people wanted, we could do an entire game episode. But let's get back to Healthcare Triage Live. Glyphix42 is very high B12, like 1,500 something per milliliter for at least the last 3 years, something to worry about. His docs say that it's non-toxic, so don't worry, but I found a batch of studies saying there's a correlation with high B12 and some cancers. Is cancer screening warranted? Dude, I am not going to give out medical recommendations to you over Healthcare Triage Live. I know nothing else about your medical history. I am pleased that you have talked to 2 primary care physicians and an endocrinologist and that they have all reassured you. And if they have, I'd like to think they know about what they'd be concerned about and they're telling you not to worry so much. There could be this correlation, but just because some people with cancer have a high B12 doesn't mean that a lot of people with high B12 have cancer. I'd have to look at the studies, but again, you've talked to 3 doctors. They've all tried to reassure you. If you're concerned specifically about this, bring the studies to them and ask you and let them reassure you again. Next question from Blind Devotion 08. Wow, some background info here. He's 26. He's legally blind with retinitis pigmentosa. He's pretty skeptical about most articles that get passed around on social networks and such. However, when it comes to stuff about vision issues, I tend to pay just a bit more attention, though I remain skeptical. I just got the following article from an eye acupuncturist, and I wanted to ask in this, the article is, and I'm going to click on it now. My God. Eye acupuncture. Yeesh. Well, why is the eye acupuncturist on the summit of Denali? Doesn't seem like that would be necessary to the story. Okay, anyway, I don't know anything about eye acupuncture. I know no evidence that says that putting needles in your eyes is good. The idea behind this is horrifying to me. Putting needles in your eye to do what? Retinitis pigmentosa, unfortunately, is like a degenerative disease that is somewhat heritable and leads usually and can strike from infancy on outwards and results in the retina and macular degeneration to the point where you have blindness. I know of no rational thought behind how putting needles in your eye could reverse this. I just don't know of anything. And I would not trust in general the idea that putting needles in people, even Eastern medicine, I don't know of anyone that does eye acupuncture. man, I would be very, very, very skeptical about that. So he asks, what studies are there about the effectiveness of acupuncture? From what I understand, it really shouldn't do much better than a placebo, right? It's interesting. There's a lot of debate about acupuncture. There have been some decent randomized controlled trials because they actually do trials with sham acupuncture where they put needles in different parts of the body. And some of those have shown that acupuncture can be good for pain relief. Some of them have even gone so far as to try to use it for like anesthesia for like, some surgery. So there's some evidence for some particular conditions that acupuncture might be helpful. The problem is then people go, well, acupuncture now works for everything and it's good for asthma and it's good for, other things. And there the evidence gets really, really weak. The trials that have to be done have to be very well constructed. You really do need a good placebo because, as we've covered, even surgical placebos can show that surgery doesn't work as well as we think because the placebo effect can be massive. So if there can be some effectiveness. Now, for blindness or retinitis pigmentosa, I know of no evidence that acupuncture will help. You ask if anyone else thinks this is a bit suspicious or even quackish. Yes, I'm suspicious. I would be concerned. I don't know of any evidence that would say that this works at all. Do we have cyclamate stuff?
I can't find.
We can't even find it. If you're watching and you're concerned, send me the links to what you think the problems with cyclamate are, and then we'll look into it. Science Miss. Hi, do you have any thoughts on cord blood banks? Is it just a waste of money or a great idea worth investing in? What do we know about the quality of that material after a while, say a year? Maybe it should be considered only by families with certain hereditary conditions. So the idea is if you put away cord blood, you're going to have sort of like stem cells of your own or like early progenitor cells of your own in some way that maybe could somehow be used in the future to help. Maybe. Yes, I mean, it costs money to store the stuff. No one knows if it'll be useful in the future. No one knows how it'll be useful in the future. No one knows, even if they do discover a use for cord blood, if the ways we're maintaining it today are up to snuff. There are a lot of companies, though, that'll do this for you. If you're asking me to put my money where my mouth is, Amy and I did not bank the cord blood of our 3 children when they were born. Because I could not come up with a way of justifying the expense and everything that was going on. And look, I'm a pretty, figure out the decision tree, figure out the game theory, talk about whether this would be worth it or not. And I could not make the numbers work. And we were not made of money, as most of you, I assume, are not. Especially when we had our babies, and I was a fellow, and Amy was not working when she had Jacob. We didn't want to spend the money. If you're made of money, there's very little risk. What's the downside? I don't know. Maybe there'll be some use for it someday. But if you're weighing the thoughts, I did not think it was worth the investment at that time. And if we did it again today, I still don't think we would bank the cord blood. That doesn't mean a decision to do so is wrong. It's a matter of your priorities and what you think of the cost. Sabrina 1995 asks, is there any science behind the recommendation to do 10,000 steps per day? I heard it was a marketing message from a podometer manufacturer. I'm laughing because last August, I debated one of the executives at one of the companies, I won't name the company, at a meeting, this exact point about whether the things you wear on your hands, I almost say the company's name again, I don't want to do that, or whether they're like really going to change the world or do anything at all about this 10,000 steps. There's nothing behind 10,000 steps. As we've talked about before, the exercise recommendations are more about time-based, 30 minutes a day of moderate activity, which can be a brisk walk 5 days a week. That's what you need. 10,000 steps a day is probably more than that. And actually, I argued the point that this messaging of like 10,000 steps a day and all this, that's about getting people who are in shape to get super duper healthy. And it's like that. It's not about trying to, make people across the world healthier. It's, the ads that they have on TV with even when the Apple Watch was doing it, was like Christy Turlington or something running a marathon. That's not America. That's not the world. That's a supermodel trying to run a freaking marathon. Who runs marathons? Other than actually one of my close friends. And he's crazy right now too, and I've told him so. I don't understand that. The last time someone did that 26 mile, or the first time someone did that 26 mile thing, he died. And that's the story. Now we're all paying homage to it. There's no need for human beings to run that much to be healthy. There's no need to do 10,000 steps to be healthy. There is a need for us to be moderately active in order to achieve the health gains that we know of from exercise. But everything above that is, to some extent, a marketing message, and you could probably ignore it. Tiva Pox, and of course my wife's probably screaming somewhere because she's really into exercise and she thinks that that's not enough. She's wrong. Tiva Pox, people tell me that people with pre-existing conditions die while waiting for treatment in Canada. Is this just scare tactics? Is there actual truth to this? I couldn't even get through this sentence without getting sarcastic. No, it's not. It's not. Okay. So where do I begin with this? First of all, you've been to Canada perhaps. It's a first world country. People aren't dying on the streets there. Their life expectancy is actually higher than it is in the United States. The idea that they're letting the old people die earlier is totally apocryphal. There have been studies of nephrologists that look at conditions like dialysis and asked both nephrologists and regular doctors in the United States and in Canada, would you be willing to withhold dialysis because of a patient's health, because of a patient's age? Shockingly enough, people in the United States were more willing to withhold the treatment because of age or because of sickness than were the nephrologists or the doctors in Canada. This is a myth. It even goes further. Canada's healthcare system is a single-payer system. Medicare, which mostly treats the old people in this country, is also a single-payer system. There's nothingly intrinsic in a single-payer system which says we need to withhold care. Otherwise, we'd be rationing and withholding treatments from people on Medicare all the time, which doesn't happen. It doesn't happen at all. So you will find that people sometimes wait longer in Canada for some procedures which are non-emergent. It does happen. There are wait times. But I have people in the United States, I have patients, I have friends who need to get treatment in the United States and can't also get in for a long time, days or weeks or months. We just call that, now you can't get an appointment. We don't call that rationing. We just call it rationing when it happens in other countries. This doesn't happen. You will find horror stories, individuals, anecdotes. You'll find them in Canada. You'll also find them in the United States. I can find you people, many, many stories in the United States about people who've been waiting for care or people who didn't get care. There's more people in the United States who do not get medications and prescriptions filled when they're given them, who do not get radiologic tests when they are ordered, who do not go to consults when they are made or referrals when they are made, and do not go to doctor's appointments they are told to go to. More people in the United States avoid that care because of cost than almost any other country we compare ourselves to. So there are just different reasons while we avoid therapy or treatments in different countries. There is some scare tactic. Besides the fact that there is no such thing as a pre-existing condition refusal or anything in Canada because, of course, it's a single-payer system, just as there is none in Medicare. There's none in the United States now, too, because of the Affordable Care Act. That's why everybody can now go to the exchanges and get insurance. It didn't always used to be that way. In the long ago of 2008, if you had a pre-existing condition in the United States, you often could not get insurance. That never happened in Canada. Rant over. Patrice Parent asks, which is worse in the American diet, lack of nutrients or overeating? In the American diet, way more people are overeating in the United States than are undereating. That doesn't mean that malnutrition doesn't exist or that some people go hungry, because they do. But I bet overeating is more common. Rowan Moran, I'm trans and doing HRT. When signing informed consent, it was pretty much, we have no idea what this will do in 20 years. What research is there being done about transition medicine? That's a great question. So part of the problem is we don't know what will happen for 20 years because we haven't been doing it for 20 years or following enough patients for 20 years. In an ideal world, we would come up with registries and ways of enrolling people who are engaging in HRT so that we could follow them for the next 20 years. I'm being sad here because I don't know if that's occurring. I know there have been increased calls at the NIH for research into some of these issues. I know that because we actually submitted a grant proposal for looking at patient-centered outcomes and what matters to patients when talking about gender reassignment surgery. So I know this stuff is going on, but these are proposals. In fact, ours gets scored, I think next week or the week after. Hopefully we'll get the grant. But I don't think there have been 20-year studies in the same way that I say this about LASIX. I don't know what happens to LASIX 20, 30 years down the line because we don't have enough people that have had it for 20 or 30 years. So, yeah, so that's not wrong that they're making you sign the informed consent, but, we'll have to wait and see. We need more research as this becomes more and more common. But I don't know. It'd be interesting. What you can do is you can go to there's a website called NIH Reporter, where you can look up all the grants given out by the NIH and ARC, by the federal government, for all kinds of processes. And you could type in a lot of the keywords here and see what grants are there. You could type in my name, for instance, under author and see what grants I've ever been given. You could do the same to see what grants have been given to do research on transition medicine. I bet there's also foundational grants that won't show up, but at least to give you an idea. Looking at the time here. Wow, I have to scroll over far. Okay, we're good. Next question comes from FartX211. You just did that to make me say fart. You've mentioned in previous episodes that you see yourself as a doctor. Oh, no, that you yourself see a doctor. Oh, sorry, I thought you were insulting me. See, that was my bad. You've mentioned in previous episodes that you yourself see a doctor. Why do doctors have doctors? Why don't you treat yourself? Okay, that's an excellent question. You know why? Because doctors suck at treating themselves and their family members. If I haven't told this story before, it's a good story. When our son, Noah, who's our second child, was a baby, not a baby, he was a toddler. So he was like 2.5 years old. Jacob was 4.5 years old, and Sydney was like a week old. He was playing in the backyard on one of these, yay high slides. There were these plastic box constructions, and he jumped off. And he landed, and he fell down, and he cried for a minute, and then he got up, and he started running around again, but he was limping. And my wife said, I think he hurt himself. And I went, he didn't hurt himself. And she's like, no, I really think he hurt himself. And we got into an argument about it. The next day, he was still limping. And Amy said, I really think he's upset. And I'm like, you're sleep deprived. We're both sleep deprived. Sydney is up all night because she's a baby. He's fine. Let's just leave it alone. By day 3, he's still limping. She's yelling at me. And at this point, I'm like, I'm going to examine him. And I jack his leg all over the place. And I examine him. And he's laughing. I swear to God, he's laughing. But he gets up and he's still limping. And Amy's like, he's not okay. And I'm like, he's okay. Day 4. I'm at work. It's like 105 and humid here in Indianapolis. It's June. That's when Sydney was born. And Amy calls me up and says, I'm taking him to the doctor. And I'm like, that's ridiculous. And she says, no, you don't know what you're talking about. You're not seeing this clearly because it's your son. And I'm like, you're not seeing this clearly because he's your son. And we got into another argument and she took him to the doctor. Then 20 minutes later, she calls me back and says, doctor's getting x-rays. At which point, I lectured my now not pregnant, but wife of a newborn. I lectured her on how she's the reason healthcare costs so much in the United States because she's allowing this test to get done that's unnecessary, and I made her take the baby and Jacob and Noah to the doctor all by themselves, and you know where this is going. His leg was broken. He walked around for the next 6 weeks in a cast. It was very cute. He tolerated it very well. I still maintain to this day, even if we hadn't gotten the cast, the green stick fracture would have gotten. But here's the point. I was a terrible doctor at diagnosing the broken leg of my child. I'm sure I would be a terrible doctor at trying to diagnose myself as well. There are studies that show that doctors don't do a good job treating themselves. They don't do a good job treating their family members. I try not even to treat friends so much. So it's like if it's a simple quick fix, boom, I will be on it. Otherwise, I will send them to doctors that I trust because doctors don't do a good job. I want another person to tell me what to do and to give me their honest opinion. I'm biased when it comes to me and my family. And of course, now I've lost all privileges in treating my children whatsoever. Any problem at all goes to the real doctor, Dr. Mazurek, who is much more competent at being a clinical pediatrician, evidently, than I am. So you shouldn't be your own doctor because you don't make good decisions, you're biased, and someday you may accuse your wife of being the cost of high healthcare costs spending in the United States, which is a really, really bad thing to do. We have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions. Trogdor Lebowski. By the way, if you go on my blog, there's an adorable picture of Noah running around in the cast as I told that story, because everyone should know it. Trogdor Lebowski, do you have any thoughts about weight loss surgery? It seems like a drastic solution, but for one with morbid obesity and looking at the poor long-term success of just diet and exercise, it's tempting. It seems to work. There have been lots of studies that show that when they do it, It does achieve sometimes dramatic results. The problems, of course, are, where do we draw the line about, making the benefits outweigh the harms? How do we not overuse it? How do we make sure that people follow it afterwards? I'm not an expert in this area, but I don't judge people who get the surgery because, as we can see, it does sometimes result in pretty dramatic improvements. All right. Do we have time for any more? Maybe one or two more. I'm going to skip this next question because it looks to be too good. But Holly Booth asks, I'm always worried that I'm not getting enough fruits and vegetables. I see the recommendations of 5 to 10 servings a day. What? Is that really the recommendation? I'm lucky to get 2 to 3. I'm pretty healthy. You jog 3 miles at 6 a.m., but you worry. 5 to 10 seems like a lot. I don't know. I don't worry about this kind of stuff. I feel like if I get vegetables, more than one meal, I'm good. I actually avoid fruits these days. I'm trying more of a low-carb thing. And so I haven't been eating as many fruits. But vegetables, come on. If you're getting 2 to 3 and you're jogging and you're healthy and everything else is good, you're probably doing fine. I think, again, as I've talked about before, I think we worry too much about the quantities. I think if you're getting a well-balanced, diet with a variety of foods coming from all different kinds of food groups and trying to avoid processed foods and following our food recommendations, you're going to be just fine. Christina Lai, how dead is brain dead? Oh! That's almost like philosophy right there. If you're asking me in general, we define brain dead as dead. If you're asking me about 1 or 2 of the very recent cases that are stirring up controversy, yeah, it gets harder than that. But for the vast majority of cases, the clinical definition of brain death equals dead. And we could do episodes on this, so I'm not even going to get into it anymore. Anyway, thank you for watching Healthcare Triage Live. Healthcare Triage News on Friday. It's going to be about vitamin D. You all seem to love vitamin D, so make sure you tune in. We'll have regular Healthcare Triage next week. No Healthcare Triage Live next week, however. No Healthcare Triage News next week, however, because I will be in Turks and Caicos on vacation. And I'm very, very excited about that. But thanks for tuning in. Watch this last Monday's episode. I don't know why it's not doing better in views, but man, should be great. We did scary news stories and scary news headlines and why you shouldn't believe them, and I gave some good examples, and I was snarkier than usual, and I thought it was good fun. You should go watch it. Plus, I talk about gaming, which is why somebody probably asked today about tabletop games. So go watch that episode. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.